Now, round of applause for the Knicks' position in that Eastern Conference. As today, I'm going to look at the lay of the land and just where we fall in that spectrum when comparing ourselves to the top teams within our conference. The Celtics, the Bucks, the Heat, the 76ers. Because the way the landscape is changing so much right now, especially with that new CBA coming around, a couple of these teams have already peaked, which can lead up to a quick ascension by the Knicks. But also, with the way the league is structured going forward, it could lead to a narrower gap for the Knicks to actually capitalize off of their come up. And this is something right now that the Celtics will be going through until 2026. Same thing for the Milwaukee Bucks. That new CBA kind of narrows the gap of when your team could be expensive and how long your championship window will last. So I'm going to start off with our top rival, the Boston Celtics, which will be the dogs of the Eastern Conference. And they have shown with the trade of Marcus Smart, they are ready to take that next step up and to compete for a championship. As a lot of teams kind of struggle with making trades like that, trading someone that's a beloved guy of the team, because that always tends to be the thing that's stopping that team from reaching to the next level. We see teams like the 76ers struggle with this with Ben Simmons. Had they traded him earlier, they possibly would have been champions by now. And a team that did make a move like this, the Toronto Raptors, when they traded a beloved DeMar DeRozan, they finally got to take that next step up. So that trade definitely has put the Celtics in position, but there's also two sides of this coin, because by 2026, especially with that new CBA, the Celtics will be over the cap. So any new roster moves, any type of new players that they try to acquire, whether through trades or trying to use exemptions, it's not going to work. So that duo of Tatum and Brown, their window is very limited for them to stay together and make that championship run. But some of the exploits the Knicks did look to take advantage of with this team, they were weak at half-court offense. And that's why they went out and got KP. So they actually have someone down low in the front court to actually take the pressure off of Tatum and Brown, perhaps to get an easy bucket. Because sometimes those guys are just chilling around the perimeter trying to make things happen as if they're point guards. That's sort of the same type of mousetrap that Kawhi and PG-13 get into sometimes. So they did address that issue, and they also addressed the issue with them not having enough guards on the perimeter besides Tatum and Brown. So that Drew Holiday trade definitely helped them out in that aspect, but their bench is still kind of thin with that guard. And also Drew Holiday could help them with facilitating the offense. Once again, taking the ball out of Tatum's and Brown's hand and actually setting them up so they can get their shots off. But one weakness the Knicks could definitely attack with the Celtics is that it's questionable how many players that they have are going to switch on pick and rolls. KP is not really that type of center. Same thing for Al Horford. So they have two old guys down low, and Mitch could really go to work on those guys, especially getting boards. But the fact that the Knicks will kind of play small with Josh Hart playing power forward at times, running pick and roll with these centers that are not really going to switch. Al Horford, once again, he's 37 years old, along with KP down low. It's not going to be really, on the defensive end, a good duo to have, especially when guys just keep running pick and rolls. And just like the Knicks, a couple of injuries in a couple of key positions for this team could be devastating, as they don't really have the depth to be reaching in the bench and have other guys cover. The Knicks kind of struggle with the same issue. If Randall goes down for a while, who's the next man up? They kind of facing a similar situation. If KP goes down or Al Horford goes down, it's going to be a situation there, because we all know one of these guys is definitely going down. More than likely it's KP, but Al Horford, once again, he's at age 37. So they're going to be playing with two big guys down low from time to time. How is that really going to work out for them? Especially with Brunson just killing off these pick and rolls and the penetration. I mean, this is where that Drew Holiday trade really came up big for this team, because there were a lot of holes in this team after that Marcus Smart trade. Even though they fixed their half-court offense by getting KP, as far as not asking Tatum and Brown to do too much on the defensive end, that Drew Holiday situation definitely does help. But once again, the Celtics will be the top dogs of the East. But at the same time, because of the new CBA and the fact that they have a lot of guys on large contracts, it will definitely limit them on their roster moves. So if guys get injured from season to season, they're not going to be able to make moves to pick up key guys that can contribute right away. So even though Tatum and Brown is in the middle of their prime, and with Jaylen Brown just getting that max contract, Jason Tatum is due for one next season. This team is definitely going to be over the tax apron. So the league overall structurally is going to limit this team's window to make the title run with particularly those two players. One of them might have to go. Now, another top dog of the Eastern Conference, the Milwaukee Bucks, are facing very similar situations to the Celtics. They're in prime position to win now, but unfortunately for them, those contracts of Giannis and having Damian Lillard on the books making 35% of the cap each is always going to put this team close to reaching that second apron, which will limit them on what players they could acquire going from season to season in order to keep this team competitive. Now, the Bucks are an older team. They've renewed a lot of contracts for guys that are older like Middleton and Brooks. And they also re-signed a couple of key guys recently before they even got Dame. And Middleton, Brooks, Pat Covington. They even gave Bobby P a contract. Shout out to Bobby P, man. He deserved that. But when you look at all these contracts combined with the money Dame is getting and the money Giannis is getting, it's always going to put this team close to that tax line. And I'm wondering with those new owners, are they going to want to stay like that, especially from year to year? The first round picks automatically go at the end of the draft. And even to dump guys like Damian Lillard as they age, because Dame right now is 33. So if he doesn't age well, in order for them to dump him, they can only trade for an exact same contract. Not down to the T, it could be a few percentages off, but they would have to trade for another player that's making anywhere from $48 to $60 million a year. So the Bucks, of course, they're signing a lot of guys for the minimum. Jay Crowder, Malik Beasley. They're always going to be looking to do that from season to season. They still don't have enough backup guards, and the perimeter defense becomes completely weak. This is going to be interesting to see because I believe this Dame trade has actually put more workload on Giannis. Dame is not a guy that plays good defense or works hard fighting through screens. That's not his character. And he's not a guy that's going to get you a ton of rebounds, which this team in particular, just like the Knicks, they love offensive rebounding. They had Drew getting rebounds, Bobby P, Brook Lopez. Of course, you got Giannis, a.k.a. Baby Shaq. This team was a rebounding machine, but they kind of gave that up now for speed and pace and a guy who can create on his own in Dame. So overall, this team will be dipping into that luxury tax from season to season. And also, they're dealing with older players like Brook Lopez, Chris Middleton, that are pretty much locked into their deals. And they have two star players that are making 35% of the cap, which is once again very hard to construct a roster around one superstar player that was making 35% of the cap. As you've seen, the Trailblazers cannot quite do it with Dame out in Portland, even though from season to season with him making so much money, this team was one of the most expensive teams in the league, and they were basically fighting to get into the play-in from season to season. So that's just with one guy making 35% of the cap. Can you imagine how hard it is to put players around these guys with two players making that type of money? So with Jrue Holiday off this team, it actually leaves an open lane for Jalen Brunson to cook. And when facing the Bucks, if we're shooting really well, the Knicks could really be cooking on this team because that perimeter defense is going to be really weak. And I'm wondering if all that weak perimeter defense is going to have Giannis playing up a little bit more. But the Bucks just having so many key guys up there at an older age. Dame 33, Chris Middleton 32, Brook Lopez 35, Pat Covington is in his 30s, Robin Lopez. I mean, this is an older team overall. A couple of key injuries, and this team could be in flux. But overall, they're in prime position right now to win. And they do have the best player in the league, no doubt. Giannis last season actually had his best season ever, which is crazy. But the Bucks overall is not a team that the Knicks could play small ball against. I know they talked about Josh Hart playing power forward, but it'll be very interesting to see how Tibbs runs his lineups against this team. But I do expect Jalen Brunson to have an easier matchup now that Jrue Holiday is off this team. Dame is definitely food off the pick and roll. He is definitely food. That doesn't really get talked about enough. Now, next up are the Philadelphia 76ers. And I almost had this team in my honorable mentions next to the Cavs and Atlanta Hawks. But this team is not serious at all. It's really hard to judge the 76ers, and this conundrum with James Harden and the 76ers almost reminds me of Will Smith and Jada Pickett. It's like no matter which way they go, they both lose. It ends in a divorce, there's financial losses. If they stay together, it's just a loss overall. The situation still remains bad. It's not going to be productive for both parties. The 76ers in a way want to stay title contenders, so whoever they trade James Harden for has to keep them within that realm, which is not going to happen because James Harden is so devalued in the marketplace right now. He's not worth a bunch of first round picks. It's just not happening. And for this season, I actually have the Knicks having a better record than the 76ers because your main key star player not wanting to be part of the team, that does not spell championship. And for this season, I had the Knicks finishing with a better record than the 76ers because the fact that one of their main stars just doesn't want to be part of the team no more and you're trying to make a championship run, those two things don't even mix. It's just lack of focus completely from the 76ers. And I do believe they try to finesse James Harden out of some money. And this is where all this kind of stems from. James Harden last season was eligible to extend his contract, but he took a 1-and-1 deal and a pay cut in order to allow the 76ers to sign PJ Tucker. But I'm pretty sure there was like a verbal promise that they're going to give him an extension this summer, 2023, which did not happen. And they try to say last season when James Harden took that pay cut, the league investigated the 76ers, and Daryl Morey, he said that he couldn't even talk to James Harden this summer because he was worried about that investigation, which we all know is bullshit because how the hell did he get James Harden from Brooklyn to the 76ers? They were definitely communicating through different channels. So all of a sudden you can't talk to your player when he's eligible for some money. It doesn't make any sense. And we kind of seen the same situation play out in Brooklyn when Kevin Durant re-signed his contract, and when Kyrie Irving did not get an extension, that's when Kevin Durant requested a trade, because it was clearly obvious that Kevin Durant, when he signed his deal, he was given a verbal agreement that Kyrie would also get extended. These behind the backdoor deal things, they don't work out well in the league, but it does happen. It is part of the league. It's always been there. This is why I struggle to have the 76ers as one of the top dogs the Knicks would have to go through in the East, but I have to put them there just because they have Embiid. But it's just a lot of things about this team is just not serious. This team going forward does have a lot of cap flexibility. We see Tobias Harris comes off the books, James Harden if he doesn't want to re-sign there. And they're pretty much just locked into an Embiid. I'm pretty sure Tyrese Maxey, they're going to extend him. That situation is kind of playing out similar to Quickly, because the only reason the 76ers are not giving Maxey an extension right now is just in case they can include him as a trade piece with Harden in order to get someone. Because if they sign him to an extension, it'll be harder to trade him. And that's the same situation that's playing out with the Knicks. They could extend Quickly. They have more than enough cap space to do so. But just in case something does come up in a trade, it'll be harder to trade him with an upcoming extension already signed. And the 76ers don't have as much depth on this team as the Bucks, man. They're even thinner. So if someone gets hurt, that's they got like guys on minimums that would step up. This team is just completely thin. It doesn't really look like a championship team. And we got to ask ourselves, how many more prime years Embiid has with his injury history? So like many other top contenders in the East, the 76ers are very front heavy. They got a bunch of large contracts followed by a bunch of minimums. Guys that they got this offseason like Mo Bamba, Paul Reed, and they got Danny Green. Patrick Beverley is the only good addition I see that they added. But once you start adding guys like Danny Green, you already know you're desperate. And just an injury to Tobias Harris could possibly having them start Danny Green. I don't know. This team just... I have the Knicks this season finishing with more wins than the 76ers. Especially if they kind of rest or load manage Embiid. But going into the 2024 offseason, the 76ers will have a lot of cap space to re-sign players. But everything about this team is just a mess. It's just a complete shit show. Last but not least, the team that's proven that the Eastern Conference has particularly been wide open, even though Embiid Giannis and Tatum sit at the very top of it is the Miami Heat. And this team, unfortunately, their stock is trending down, especially with the loss of Gabe Vincent and Max Strus. But I still have them as one of the top teams in the East due to the culture that they have and the legendary coach Eric Spoelstra. Now, last season in the playoffs against the Knicks, him and Tibbs was in a hell of a battle, I'm not going to lie. But Eric actually put the Knicks in a position where they had to perform in their weakest positions. He crowded up the paint anytime Brunson penetrated, and he forced the Knicks to make other guys take shots. He took away Mitchell Robinson's rebounding by sticking Kevin Love on him. Kevin Love boxed the fuck out of Mitchell Robinson. He took him out of position from getting those offensive boards and those second chance opportunities. I mean, even when Tibbs made his substitutions, I think Eric was smart enough to make sure that Bam was able to cook, knowing that Obi Toppin was pretty much the power forward that was supposed to guard the paint. That was the time when Bam was really getting majority of his points. And of course, this team is led by someone that possesses the same characteristics as Jalen Brunson, has a lot of intangibles, has a lot of heart, and just the way they're able to lock in and produce during big moments of the game. You still got to have the Heat up there. But they did suffer major losses to their roster, and they didn't really shake shit up enough to make sure that this team gets back up to the Eastern Conference Finals. But I can't underestimate Pat Riley, because I'm pretty sure, even though he lost Gabe Vincent and Strus, that team particularly has a next man up mentality. And it wouldn't shock me if this team eliminates the 76ers in the playoffs or eliminates even the Celtics. But it also wouldn't shock me if they got eliminated in the play-in. The floor and ceiling with this team is very unpredictable. But with Tibbs running off-ball plays with Josh Hartenstein making Tom Brady passes during the preseason, if the Knicks continue to run plays like that on the offensive end, it could spell trouble for the Heat, because that's pretty much the formula that they used against the Knicks. Even though they had guys who couldn't put the ball on the floor and dribble, they just had guys off-ball movement on 100. And that's how Duncan Robinson got shots, Gabe Vincent, Strus. None of them was creating for themselves. Everything was off-ball movement. So if the Knicks add that to their arsenal, the sky is the ceiling. But even though Jimmy Butler is getting older, he's still in his prime. He's still in his prime years. I expect the Miami Heat to be a contender this season, next season, and the following season afterwards. They pretty much have guys like Tyler Hero locked in. Bam is locked in. Bam is one of the top 7 players in the league. I would say top 5 defenders easily. I mean, last season was very underestimated that Randall was on one leg and going up against one of the best defenders in the league. That's something that tends to get overlooked. Even if Randall wasn't injured, he had a tough matchup in that series regardless. But the Heat have plenty of cap space to add someone else. They're pretty much waiting for a perfect opportunity and for a player to actually fit into their system. We've seen them reject Bradley Beal. They said that they didn't really see the value in him. They wanted Dame. They struck out there. They have enough cap room to get another guy. So if that team definitely does get another guy, they're dangerous. But once again, I still have them as their ceiling is they can get to NBA Finals, Eastern Conference Finals. But if they get eliminated in the play-in or they don't even make the playoffs, I wouldn't be shocked. Because last season, there was only about 3 minutes away from getting eliminated in the play-in. And then they went to the finals. But the Heat primarily proves the Eastern Conference is wide open. Now, I don't want to underestimate some other teams that I didn't include in this list, so I just mentioned a few honorable mentions. The Cleveland Cavaliers, they still are weak at that small forward position. Last season in the playoffs, the Knicks kind of killed them. With Isaac Okoro, he couldn't not keep Jalen Brunson in front of him, which caused the Cavs defense to collapse other players, and they pretty much got cooked. And then Mitch also killed them because of that collapse. We've seen other players had to recover and kind of double team Brunson. That allowed Mitchell to get a bunch of offensive rebounds. So they really still didn't fix that issue. Even though they got shooters like Max Strus and Yang, they still can't defend laterally like that. So that small forward position is still questionable. And the Cavs were kind of limited on what moves they could make this offseason due to the Donovan Mitchell trade. With the Cavaliers, I'm still not understanding what the media sees in this team. They still have them ranked higher than the Knicks, even though they still haven't addressed major issues that they have on their roster. Their bench scoring, that small forward position. They need somebody to really defend at that position. And the only thing they pretty much addressed was the shooters. That coin, it really has hamstrung this team on what they could do. They can't even trade a draft pick until 2024 offseason. But they do have Donovan Mitchell, but I still have the Cavs in the same position as last year. Because Donovan Mitchell, another first-round exit, you can't be living off the Westbrook name all these years. He eliminated Westbrook from the playoffs years ago, and that was it. What has he done recently? But pretty much the Cavs just add a bunch of three-point shooters. And Max Strus wasn't even shooting all that last year until the playoffs. That's when he started shooting better. But they did add better shooters than what they had, but I'm still not seeing it with the Cavs. My last honorable mention is the Atlanta Hawks, and they've pretty much brought back the same team as last year. They got rid of a few guys like John Collins. That was pretty much a salary dump. They didn't want to be over the tax. And they signed Patty Mills, which that's not a bad signing for them. But the thing about the Hawks, they have way too many guards that just don't play defense. So when the Knicks play against some guys like Quickly, DiVincenzo, Brunson, RJ, they should all be able to cook against these guys because they don't really play defense. They actually don't have any kind of guard that specializes and just locks players down. DeJounte Murray, from time to time, he has that reputation, but it's sporadic. It's not really what people think it is. But when you put those guys next to Trae Young, that makes it even worse. So this team, nearly from night to night, they have to be perfect on offense, especially if they want to be one of the top teams of the Eastern Conference. But the fact that in the past they have proven in big key moments that they could come up big, that's why I have them under honorable mentions. And with that new head coach that they have, Quinn Snyder, because the Atlanta Hawks, best believe, they're starting to take a different direction, especially with this Trae Young almost holding this franchise hostage. They've hired a kind of no-nonsense coach that'll hold them accountable, especially for him fighting through screens and actually playing some fucking defense. But this team is going to stay way below the luxury tax line. They're going to have a room to sign other players, but for now, they're pretty much bringing back the same team, which is a bunch of wings that really can't defend along with Trae Young, and their best defenders are their centers. The center coming off their bench and their starter. Those are pretty much their two best defenders, and those guys can't even be on the court at the same time. So just like the Cavs, I pretty much have them in that honorable mention. So overall, this Eastern Conference is still wide open, but as we see with the Celtics and the Bucks, that even the top dogs of the East are going to have to kowtow to this new CBA, and we're going to see how long guys' championship windows even last. So in the meantime, the Knicks, the only thing they could do right now is continue developing Mitch, Grimes, RJ, and Quickly, and they got to play the patient waiting game for waiting for the perfect opportunity for a player that fits into our culture and could take us to that next level. Again, a player that fits into our culture. Not any superstar can just come to New York anymore. We have a culture that's established. It's a certain kind of player.